Yeah, well, I'm gonna take it home and stick it in the drawer with all the other.
Yeah, you're probably gonna throw it away, not tell me.
All right. Let me go ahead and give you all these. Yep.
Thank
Well,
Does anybody? That was listed for Monday.
I know.
Okay.
You'll still get my favorite book though. It's not. Good to see you, Carl. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Jim got waylaid at the last minute. I thought he was gonna come.
Oh man, that would have been
He
really fun.
promises he will come next time, so.
That would have been really
I signed him
fun.
up, but
Cool.
he's
Yeah.
always gets.
Well, Jill and I will take a rain check on our visit.
Yeah, I mean, you know that, Will, did you know that Joe Harmon's mother and her mother were best friends? And live on Florida.
What are the chances? How about that? I love that. I
Well,
love it.
Sandy used to say instead of 6 degrees of separation, for Episcopalians, it's about 2 or 3.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
We're such a little
But
group.
I was a
Right.
Presbyterian, so. And his mom and dad were too, the lady was a Presbyterian.
Well, let's see here. All right, so again, I think I started the last class or the one before, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that y'all have likely experienced situations where there seemed no way forward. You ever experienced that before?
Oh,
Yeah, okay, all right. That was a pretty big limb I went out on, so
Oh,
it was
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
safe. But you know, illness, money, even relationships that kind of fall apart can feel like a setback, and can feel like you don't know how to go forward anymore, like a roadblock kind of thing. But also sometimes it's only when that happens that we find an undiscovered way forward, a way that we didn't know before. And then we go to the altar and thank God for that. One of my favorite examples, and it'll come into play with this reading today, but one of my favorite examples is the 40 years in the wilderness. The Hebrew people, after getting out of Egypt, on their way towards the Promised Land, if you look at a map, and you look at where they were in Egypt and where Jerusalem is, you can draw, and there's well-made roads and well-traveled paths from Egypt to Jerusalem. It would have taken if you hurried, could have taken 10 days. Not 40 years, right? And so I use this in youth ministry a lot, because a lot of times kids, when they're, and even adults, but kids especially when you're 16 or so, you just want to get there. You just want to get there. But you have to go in the wilderness for 40 days for some reason. And as a teenager, you don't understand it. And oftentimes as an adult, I don't understand it either sometimes. But the reality is that if the Hebrew folks had gone up the coastline, where 80% of the human population lived was on the coastline back then, and still true today. I mean, if you look at how close the houses are out on the island versus Hagley. And it's just you couldn't get away with Hagley out there. Everybody wants to live. So if they'd have gone the short way, they would have gone through several nations, and they would have been clobbered. They may have been lucky to get to the Promised Land with 2 or 3 refugees left. So instead, God had them go through the wilderness and take the long way, which in fact was the safe way. But they didn't know that at the time. And so those kinds of those unexpected paths that are discovered are sometimes a way forward that you didn't know, that you just didn't know about. I'm wondering, does anybody want to share an experience where you felt trapped only to discover a previously undiscovered way forward? I mean, I could talk about my Land Rover, but that's not very fun. Because I have found lots of solutions around, other than the normal way of doing things on that, but that's a little different. We're talking about human lives here.
Well, illness, I mean, all I can think of is my husband's illness, and it's hard to think of a way forward except that you try everything that's available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you get to the point where you just have to accept it's inevitable.
Right.
That death is inevitable, and accept that,
And this is a big
make your way
question.
forward.
And this is a big question to ask, Caroline. But that acceptance, that may have been an option that you didn't know about before. You know, and that's hard. That's some hard words to say.
Well, thinking back on it, I've always thought it was a little bit better in the long run to have had time to get your brain wrapped around it than to have a sudden death. Sudden death would be almost worse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's much harder on those that are left, I think, like when our dad died, I mean, at 58, I just thought I'd never get over it, it's so hard, that's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see, I mean, you don't ever want it to happen. Right. But you kind of do, I can see how you would get, like my mom, she lived to be 99, so when she died, we just celebrated, she was, it had such a great life.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you know, and I talk to the firefighters about that a lot, who see a lot of death and a lot of unfairness. You know, bad things happening to good people, kind of thing. And usually the unexpected path that they find to get through that is faith. That there is a worldview that has death in it, that has unfairness in it. And it's you know, and it's just part of the situation that God's present in. You know what I mean? And that kind of, and so they know that even though, so yes, there is death, but God's here, so I can handle it. And that's the path that they discover. You know, that I've seen so often in what, 5 or 6, maybe even 7 years of doing that. I don't even know, but you know, Nancy.
Thinking back to parents, after my dad died, we felt very concerned about what was going to happen to my mother, because she couldn't stay on her own, and she found the retirement home that was connected with our church, and she had been a strong leader in our church, and she went there, and it was like she ran the place. You know, she set up all the events for them, and she played the piano every day, and it was as much a perfect thing for them to have her come as it was for her.
Yeah.
And we were all able to go on with our lives, because none of us, I mean, my husband would have probably left if my mother had moved. And, you know,
there were 2 of you.
that's probably true.
Yeah.
But, so that was, and it was, and we always said that was like this miracle that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, she
Yeah.
fit right in there, and she was there for years. It was a long time before she had to move into another place.
Yeah.
So,
Anyone else? But you can kind of see, I mean, the holiness almost of that undiscovered, you know, that option you didn't know was there, and you wouldn't have known was there if you hadn't have been, you know, stuck where there seemed to be no way forward. You know, so we're going to look at a Bible story today that talks about that. And let's see here. So we've done that. Okay. Oh, let's pray. O God of all that is known and unknown to us, open our eyes and spirits in this session to the ways that you would have us journey and to the lives that you would have us lead. Amen. All right, so if y'all grab your Bibles, we'll go to the Old Testament today. Joshua 3, 7 through 17. Oh, it's going to be so much fun watching y'all try to find Joshua.
Yeah, I'm flipping.
Me too, don't worry.
Way towards the front. Well, I opened it.
Joshua Judges, I remember now.
Yep, there you go. Joshua Judges.
What? Okay. Joshua what? Where is it?
3, 7 through 17.
I got it. I did have to memorize it. Joshua 3. Did you say 10?
17. 7 through 17.
7 through 7.
Yeah. 3, 7 through 17. And I tell you, this is what I'd like to do with this, because I'm going to divide this passage up a little bit as we look at it, because we kind of need to pull it apart to see what we're talking about here. It's dense. So can I have a volunteer read verses 7 and 8 aloud?
And the Lord said to Joshua, "This day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. And they shall command the priest who bear the ark of the covenant, when you come to the brink of the waters of the Jordan, you shall stand still in the Jordan."
Okay, so we're going to go over this in a second, but just so you'll know where we are about to enter the promised land. Okay, that's where we are. Okay, all right. All right, if someone will, somebody go ahead and read 9 through 13.
Joshua then said to the Israelites, "Draw near and hear the words of the Lord your God." Joshua said, "By this you shall know that among you is the living God, who without fail will drive out from before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites."
Brava.
And how far am I going?
To 13.
End of the paragraph. The ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is going to pass before you into the Jordan. So now select 12 men from the tribe of Israel, one from each tribe. When the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, rest in the waters of the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan flowing from above shall be cut off. They shall stand in a single heap.
And 14 through 17, please.
Your turn.
Oh, Lord, sorry. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan is at flood stage, all during the harvest. Yet, as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. Piled up in heap a great distance away at a town called Adam, in the vicinity of Zarthon,
Sure.
while water flowing down to the sea of Arba, that is the Dead Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stopped in the middle of the Jordan and stood on dry ground while all of Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Mm-hmm.
when it, in a heap doesn't really give me the picture that when you see the story on TV, you know, on the movie.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's not these walls of water, it's a pile of water, which is interesting. A pile of water.
Heap of water.
A heap
Yeah.
of water. Yep.
Well, how does that I mean, this would have been translated from.
I don't do Hebrew very well. I'm sorry. I can do the Septuagint, which is the earliest Greek, But honestly, I find that's just kind of a waste. It needs to be done from the Hebrew, and I'm Sandy was the last one we had that really knew that stuff. Seminarians only have time for one, and Ryan and I both chose Greek, so.
Yeah.
But I'm just not sure. But I do like that image. I mean, it's just something. It's just different. You know what I mean? It just sort of got this kind of tripped over itself up there almost, or something. Now, for those who have been to the Holy Land and have seen the Jordan, please remember that the waters of the Jordan is used for irrigation much more today than it was back then. So the Jordan today is a little stream. It's not very big at all. About 8 feet wide and 4 feet deep. And muddy. Back then, it would have been a much bigger river. Yeah. Because the water wasn't siphoned off before it got, where they were crossing down to Jericho. Which is where Nancy, you were on that trip, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And Betsy was.
I didn't get to go that day.
That's-
I actually went to the Jordan, but we saw it when we were driving through.
That's what I
It was
thought.
muddy and
Yeah,
rainy
yeah,
and-
but you remember how small. It was not a magnificent, intimidating sight. So when you read this story, you're like, what's the big hubbub? Just walk through the thing. Well, but remember, it was a lot bigger then. I mean, like it would have been a dangerous crossing, especially at flood stage. That's a spring-fed. So not only did you have rains, but you have snow melt and stuff. So it's more water than the land should allow, kind of thing. So that's good to explain. So let's look at verses 7 and 8, and if you will, let's see here. Actually, I'm sorry to jump around. Let's turn our question page over and let's look at the setting the scene. This is an important information here. I'll read the Joshua and Matthew part for those who are complaining about skipping around in the Gospels and not going over a reading that you prepared for. A reading from the book of Joshua might seem to interrupt recent focus texts from the Gospel of Matthew. Ironically, though, Joshua and Matthew share intriguing roots. The book of Joshua narrates the story of the leader who had taken over the role after Moses died. Scholars have long noted that Matthew several times presents Jesus as a new Moses, who finds deliverance as an infant from a tyrannical ruler, who goes up a mountain to receive teachings to guide the community. And additionally, scholars such as Walter Brueggemann have argued that the imagery and promissory role of land in the Old Testament closely parallels the imagery and promissory role of the kingdom of the New Testament. Joshua narrates Israel's entry into the land. Likewise, Matthew's gospel, more than any other gospel, emphasizes Jesus' teaching regarding God's kingdom or sovereign realm. There's a couple competing schools of thought in early Christianity about Jesus. One was that he was the second Moses. That spoke really well to Jewish folks. You know what I mean? Made sense. And with all these similarities, it was like, hey, yeah, and in an oppressed nation, having someone that says, tell, O Pharaoh, let my people go, would probably be pretty enticing, right? The other school of thought, however, is much more of a Gentile side, and that Jesus is the new Adam, the new creation. So you can kind of see one is a little bit more universal, one is more cultural. They both work. There's nothing wrong with either one, but you can sort of see how different groups have interpreted the life and ministry of Jesus and what they symbolize depending on where they're coming from.
So does Son of Man come from Jesus being the new Adam?
Well, we've all wondered about that. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And of course, some folks have said, that's what it meant, St. Paul being one of them. But there was a big division. And you can see that fed into the division in Jerusalem between Peter and Paul. That was not written down in Acts, but I wouldn't be surprised. I'm kind of conjecturing here, I'm sorry, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of the beef as well. Is that Peter was probably comfortable in calling Jesus, or conceiving of him as Jesus is the new Moses, to deliver the people. And maybe Paul was a little on the side of Jesus being a new creation. You know what I mean? Now they both work. And here in an inclusive church, we get to include both. And it's a wonderful gift to have here. So not, one's not better than the other. They're just two ways of understanding it, and they come from culture. So, so let's see here. And I tell you, do you hear any other connections or anything like that about, any other connections between Moses and Jesus that you can think of? It's a little sneaky.
The thing we talked about last week, and it's not the Ten Commandments, but when they asked what's most important, Jesus, what the most important commandment was, he connected it to
Yes.
the Ten Commandments, which
That's right.
Moses.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, yeah, of all the things to say, you quote Moses there. That's kind of cool. That's not bad. I think one of the other things is the birth, and who the father was. And this is a little dicey and makes us uncomfortable. But to a different hearer of a different time, Moses was the son of Pharaoh in many ways, and that was a divine ruler, according to them. And Jesus is not the son of Joseph. I mean, well, sort of, but, Son of God, another divine figure, So there is that similarity as well of divine birth. That's very, very common in ancient times. And even today, when you have somebody claiming to be the, next prophet or whatever, they say, my mama never slept with some, or something like that, or I'm the long lost princess of some kingdom that's gone now, and that things like that. We like to have divine births. It makes a great story, and pretty much I was I majored in comparative religions, and it's pretty common for your religious figure to be of divine birth. So that's another similarity there. So does anybody want to read the next one? And if y'all want to, you can read it silently, but I like hearing y'all. The Joshua and the waters.
I'll read yours, Carol.
Thank you.
Ask the fourth grade Sunday school class, who fought the Battle of Jericho? And they will answer without hesitation.
Joshua.
They might tell you how Joshua marched his army around the city for 6 days, and how on the seventh day the people blew trumpets and gave a nice cry, and the walls came tumbling down. If you ask those same children, how did Joshua cross the Jordan, you will get no response at all. That is the challenge with the passage from Joshua. The miraculous crossing of the Jordan is totally eclipsed by the fall of Jericho.
Yeah, I know, man. This is really important, and we just skip right over it. It's a big deal. All right, how about the next chapter? Next paragraph, I'm sorry.
Both events demonstrate the power of the living God. But for my money, mastering the waters of the Jordan is far more awe-inspiring than destroying the fortifications of Jericho. In the Hebrew scriptures, water represents chaos, Genesis 1 and 2, and God's judgment on humankind, Genesis 6. Water has the power to bless as well as to curse. This is not the first time the Israelites have crossed a body of water. When Moses led the people through the Red Sea, they began crossing as slaves and emerged as free people. When Joshua leads the Israelites through the Jordan, they cross as nomadic tribes and emerge as settled nation. More than that, these two water crossings act as bookends, bracketing God's promise to free the people and bring them to a land flowing with milk and honey. God's promise is fulfilled in their passing through the dangerous waters, proving that God, who alone has power over the chaos of the water, has done this great thing.
And again, it's really hard to imagine that pitiful little stream as chaotic. But it was at one time. But it really, I mean, I just can't get the image of that little thing out of my mind, and like such fanfare to walk across a little 2-foot stream, but you know. So.
Didn't y'all have steps to walk down into it? You didn't have to.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it wasn't any mud or nothing like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to reread 7 and 8 for you of the right chapter. There we go. The Lord said to Joshua, "This day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, so that they may know that I will be with you as I was with Moses. You are the one who shall command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant. When you come to the edge of the waters of the Jordan, you shall stand still in the Jordan." All right. So, let's put ourselves in the story. If you got the sandals of Joshua on, what would you have been thinking as you heard those words? Send the priests into the middle of the river, carrying your most valued possession.
What if I drop it?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Right. What if we lose it? You know what I mean? I mean, again, you've got to remember, this was not a stream. This was a huge river. And the image that I have is in Asheville, the French Broad River. You know what I mean? And it's wide. I mean, there's parts we used to, kayak and raft. I mean, it's got class 4 rapids on it in places, So yeah, how are you going to get across that thing? Especially with your wagons, and all this. I mean, it wasn't just a group of 10 or 12. It was a lot of people, So, what about if you were one of the Israelites? They're not quite Israelites at this point. They're just before they're Israelites, but future Israelites. What if you see, the priest picking up this thing and walking out into this raging river? What are you thinking?
I ain't going.
Right.
You asked me that faith, but I don't see anything that gives me, feeling that it's gonna happen. Yeah.
Sure, they probably didn't know how to swim.
Do you identify with one more than the other? With Joshua or the people? I'm just curious. Is one easier for you to kind of understand? Which one?
Joshua or the people?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I would be one of the people.
The people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joshua.
Okay. Yeah.
I would.
Well, and then having it thrust upon you, you don't know what's coming, what's the Lord gonna say to you to do, and you don't know,
Right.
is it gonna be something I can do, something,
Right.
faith, it's kinda like Moses, like, you're asking me to do this? I'm like, I really know.
Oh, I know all about it. Don't worry. I know all about it.
So there's that, that's how he's kinda, I guess, maybe he's not voicing it, but.
Yeah, and I think that there's two different perspectives, right? Of the spiritual leader and the dilemma that he has, and those that follow and the dilemma that they have. They're very different. Same dilemma, but very different on how you approach it. That dichotomy, that sort of dual, kind of this or that, has its place in another Bible reading, and it's the Pentecost story. So remember how the disciples go out into the street and they preach and everyone understands them. Was that a miracle of the disciples' tongue or a miracle of the people's ears? And you will identify with one more than the other, And I'll say also culturally groups identify with one more than the other very often. When I do Bible studies with high income, low income, or white folks, black folks, or whatever, the folks that feel like they have very little distance between them and a say in what's going on identify with the disciples. They identify with Joshua. Those that feel like they really have little to say of what's being decided way up above them, and they're just doing they're just living their lives, they identify with the people. And I've seen that over and over and over again throughout my life doing Bible studies with different groups.
Does gender play a role in it?
It certainly does. It certainly does.
If you're in one of the lower caste, let's use our caste.
Yeah, there you go.
Group,
Exactly.
And you're a female, then you're definitely.
Sure. And you'll identify, with the people, with the hearers, and those that feel that they have a close proximity to power, identify with the speakers, and I've seen that time and time again, and it's just fascinating. But I see that dualism here too, with leader versus people, and who do we, when we go in our mind, whose shoes do we put on, and to think about that. All right, let's do that again, but with the next one, and I'll read the next section too, okay? Joshua then said to the Israelites, "Draw near and hear the words of the Lord your God." Joshua said, "By this you shall know that among you is the living God, who without fail will drive out from before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites. The ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is going to pass before you into the Jordan. So now select, 9:13. So now select 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. And when the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, rest in the waters of the Jordan flowing from above shall be cut off, and they shall stand in a single heap." So, let's say you have the shoes of one of the priests on, and you got to go in first. How do you feel?
Is my faith strong enough?
Yeah. Right. I mean, you got to look like you're pretty secure in this because everybody's watching.
Yeah.
I know about that too. What do you think about the Canaanites and the Hivites and the Hittites and the others? How do you think? I mean, let's say they're standing on the other side, right next to Jericho. What do they hear?
They're apprehensive.
A little bit, huh? Right. Like what's coming? Now they may have seen nomadic tribe after nomadic tribe send priests and drowned. Tribe after tribe after tribe, and they may not have been worried. I don't know. But that dualism too is fascinating to me. And again, you can identify with one group over the other. When I look at this and study Scripture with non-believers, which can be done, it really can. They often identify with the former inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, the Hittites, and all this sort of stuff. And so so it's interesting. It's all right. One more. When the people set out from their tents to cross over the Jordan, the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant were in front of all the people. Now the Jordan overflows all its banks throughout the time of harvest. So when those who bore the Ark had come to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests bearing the Ark were dipped in the edge of the water stopped flowing from above still, rising up in a single heap, far off at Adam, the city that is next to Zarethan. While those flowing toward the sea of Arabah, the Dead Sea, were wholly cut off. And then the people crossed over opposite Jericho. While all Israel were crossing over on dry ground, the priests who bore the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan until the entire nation finished crossing over the Jordan. So, I'm sorry?
Wonder how long that took to get everybody.
I know, right? Yeah.
I mean, they have to stand there. Seems like that was a long time, but.
Is there an estimate of how many people there were?
No, I mean, evidently you had at least 12 nomadic tribes,
Right.
so that had to have been at least a decent number because the tribes were pretty decent in number. I mean, you think of clans, but again, we don't know. We don't know. I would suggest looking at the next, the Jericho stuff, because I think it goes into detail how many they brought, to the battle, and that could give you an idea how many would cross. That's about, that's the next number we get is that one. So I would look at that one. So is there any details in that last little bit that are kind of confusing and all that sort of stuff? I mean, other than the water being heaped up at Adam? Yeah. I kind of like that they stopped, because one of my favorite things is to at the end of church to say bye to everybody. You know what I mean? Or like say hello to everybody in the beginning. You know, I can see the priest doing that. Like, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. You doing all right? How's the fam? Yeah, all right. Oh, hey, how you? Just I can just see that.
Standing there, holding your eye, they wouldn't be talking.
And what would be the size of the Ark of the Covenant? I mean, what are we?
Oh, we got some cubits. Yeah, we know how many cubits, but we don't know how big a cubit it is. But we know it was a certain number of cubits. We just don't know how
many
many.
people does it take to carry?
Well, 12 seems to be a decent
Yeah,
number.
so those are the, yeah.
But they could have taken shifts that way. I don't know. I don't know. Or, maybe it was like the ecumenical service where, all the priests have to be apart. Even if you don't do anything, you still got to be standing there in the Jordan. I don't know. Maybe.
So Joshua and the 12 representatives from each tribe, that's the 13 you need to have, right? Isn't it? Jewish
yes,
service, you
yes.
gotta have 12
Yeah.
men?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And that's why.
13 men, sorry.
Right. That's why.
Okay, so Joshua and plus 12.
Yep.
So there's something there.
Yeah. I mean, these traditions, all those traditions came from these things, and so, any symbolism that you caught there? Any kind of thing?
Feet on the ground have to mean something.
Mm-hmm.
Dry ground too.
Yeah.
And completed crossing on dry ground.
Yep.
So there's something.
Also, notice the note about the Dead Sea. Death is not fed during this time. This is a life thing.
And they call it the Salt City in that.
Oh yeah. Arabah was its name back then. So yeah, and again, as those who went to the Holy Land remember Mike B. Galilee's wonderful little sermon. The Sea of Galilee is the river, is the lake of life, because water flows into it and flows out of it. The Dead Sea is the sea of death because it does not let water go. It just hoards, and it's a good image. Yeah. And so it just holds, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I have an answer to how big the Ark of the Covenant was.
Oh, really?
The biblical Ark of the Covenant is approximately 133 centimeters, 52 inches long, 80 centimeters, 31 inches wide, and 80 centimeters high, in the shape of a rectangular chest.
Yeah. And I've made one to those dimensions before at my beloved summer camp that I grew up going to at the Diocese of Western North Carolina, Camp Henry, named after Bishop Henry. We were at a property in Black Mountain called In the Oaks. You Presbyterians must have passed that on your way to Montreat at one point. And it was a wonderful little Episcopal retreat center and place like that. Martin Luther King Jr. spent a night there, and that was the room that he stayed in was always my kind of central command place. That was because I was assistant director a lot. And but then we sold that property and moved out to Lake Logan near Canton, North Carolina. And we wanted to take the things from one property to the next that were sacred. And so we came up with the idea of building an ark and placing in it symbols of the things that made Camp Henry what it was. And then we had a number of campers carry that ark down the road to the new property and walked in, got all the stuff out, put it back to use. And so, but that ark's still there somewhere. But it was fun. I did it I think I did it with the older kids at camp, and we all, just built a box, and all that, and it was pretty fun. It was cool. Did the little serifs on the top, the whole 9 yards. It was very, very Indiana Jones looking. Totally, yeah. But I love that death is cut off. Death is not fed during this time. The Dead Sea is not fed. It even gets a break from getting saltier, just for a moment. I don't know. There's some symbolism there too for me. And then also, there is some baptismal symbolism in this, is there not? You know, remember the old baptismal rite? And those that did the book study of the Holy Cross Living Tree book. Remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
Remember how baptism, you used to have these cross-shaped pools with steps down in, steps out. And you would go in as one, go under, come back out as a new being. In many ways, that applies here too. Now, they didn't get wet, or at least the priest did. The priest did, but nobody else did. But there is that image too of coming in as one, coming in as a nomadic tribes, coming out as a nation. You know, so there is that idea of that baptismal regeneration, and we'll get to that in a second. So any other things? Us preachers, we pull these things out. We love them. We live and die by them. Yeah, but and then also, notice what time of year this all happens. During the time of harvest, time of bountifulness, of abundance, right? I mean, what better time to roll up at home than dinner time, right? You're hungry after a long trip, and so there's food there to eat. You know what an example of God's providence. I remember stories of the early settlers to this area from England who would leave. When it was rather nice and sunny in England, and get on the boat, and they'd get over here and land in the middle of winter. That's the opposite of what's happening in our Bible story today. They're arriving at harvest time. I mean, there's enough to go around. They're going to be okay. So I like that symbol too. That this happens during a time of abundance everywhere that you can see. All right. Well, let's turn these sheets over. Any comments or questions? We're doing okay? Check the time. Yep, still fine. If I could have an example, read the what.
After the death of Moses, his young assistant Joshua becomes the leader of the Israelite people, and through his efforts, the Israelites enter Canaan, the promised land. The crossing of the Jordan River is a pivotal event, as important as the Israelites crossing of the Red Sea, which symbolized the Israelites leaving a settled experience of oppression in Egypt to become wanderers sustained by God and living under divine promise. The crossing over the Jordan River takes the people out of the wilderness, completes their initial formation as God's people, and symbolizes a move toward unity, stability, permanence, and well-being.
So, let's just take these three of those separately. Is there any detail in the passage or anything like that about, taking the Israelites out of the wilderness? It is a bookend of putting them into the wilderness. But it's also the end of what we call in anthropology the end of a liminal phase. So in every culture, we're designed to do this as human beings. Every culture, when you go from being a child to being an adult, you go through a liminal phase. Okay? Now, ours in Christianity is very, very short, and I'll tell you in a second what it was. But let's look at African cultures. I'm led to believe that they are as close to early human behavior as we can get. So that's why we look at those in anthropology. When you're a child, you have a certain set of rules and obligations in the community, the tribe, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it community. And they're the obligations of a child. And then when you reach a certain age, you join all the others of that certain age, and you are put in a hut with no windows. Nobody can see in, nobody can see out. Put food under the edge so that you can eat. You stay in there for a week. And then after that week's over, somebody comes and unlatches the door for you, and you emerge not as a child, but as an adult to that community. Now that's very stark how that's divided out. We still do that. What are some of the ways that we still do that these days? or you have a liminal phase, an in-between time between this and this in our lives. Premarital counseling. That's a good one, right?
Thinking of driver's license.
Yes. Learner's permit.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So we go through these all the time, with our baptism, the liminal phase is the rite itself. Now we used to have a little bit more time of preparation for baptism, and in the early church, we would even send people out of church before communion to go and read and learn, because they couldn't take communion at that time, not baptized. And so there was a prayer, the sending out of the catechists, or whatever it was, catechumens, that's what it was. And so, and they would leave and leave the community and then come back in, as a baptized person, So we used to do that a little bit more. Now the liminal phase in baptism is much shorter, it's really shorter. But we all have them, and marking them, the beginning and the end of the liminal phase, whether it's learner's permit, driver's license, right? Or enlisting and commissioning in the Army or something like that. That middle phase, people don't see you much.
Basic training.
Exactly. You don't have visitors during basic training. You go in as one person, you come out as another. Really.
First month of college.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Pledging to a fraternity, those kinds of things. Seminary is a wonderful liminal time for clergy. We leave the community that we're going to work with, we go and learn, we come back as a different thing. So artist's retreat, liminal thing. So these are important to human beings because we've always honored them. And I think it's wonderful that this liminal time is marked by the same way that it was marked as the beginning. It's walking through this river.
COVID time.
I'm sorry?
COVID time.
I was wondering if somebody's going to get there.
COVID time.
This is a
You get engaged
yes.
and then get married.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. Now we've shortened that period to not being for the groom not seeing the bride on the wedding day. So that liminal phase has been shortened to about 8 hours, but that's okay. Right. But I think but we've always marked those little, and it's so important to us anthropologically speaking. We do that, and I found as a parent, when you mark those times, they are remembered very well. Also time out, by the way, is a liminal phase.
Was your going off and
Sabbaticals are often liminal phases. Yeah, and that's the idea. Is that you don't want the same old me to come back. That's why you sent me. And I was also pretty clear with y'all that I didn't want the same old you when I got back. It can be liminal for us both. And it was. Yeah, it was. It was a sabbat. I get a break from you, you get a break from me. To put it succinctly. But we will both grow during this time apart, so that when we get back together, we really appreciate that, and that's the whole idea of clergy sabbaticals. That's why they're so important. It's not just a vacation. I would have done something different if that was the case. But now I'm not saying my next one won't be a vacation, but no, I'm just kidding.
How about people who get divorced, even though it's frowned upon, but still they go through that from marriage to divorce?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I have to think about that one, but yeah, because that's not the completion of a cycle; it's a progression. You know what I mean?
True.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. You're
But
right.
anyway.
Yeah.
But let's see here. But what do I want to do? Let me grab a prayer book right quick. I'm going to read you a psalm.
Thank
See,
you.
Nancy. You all right? You don't have to. I'll just read it to you. Get there. Psalm 107. Okay. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, and his mercy endures forever. Let all those whom the Lord has redeemed proclaim that he has redeemed them from the hand of the foe. He gathered them out of the lands, from the east and from the west, from the north and from the south. Some wandered in desert wastes. They found no way to a city where they might dwell. They were hungry and thirsty. Their spirits languished within them. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He put their feet on a straight path to go to a city where they might dwell. And that is inspired directly by this story of Joshua. Yeah. And so let's see. Well, I'm running out of time, and all right, I'm going to slow down a little bit. Well, no, that's not what I was going to do. Wait a second. I must have dreamed that part. I don't remember that. Well, how about that? Why did I bring the picture down? Sorry. Let's read the where on here. Deborah, it's your turn.
Oh, okay. Where is God in these words? Central to our lectionary reading is the tradition of a God who makes a way out of no way when all possible ways are closed. The God who has been with the people makes a way out of no way. In God there is hope for deliverance, to use a religious idiom of the black church in North America. God ain't finished with us yet. History is not closed. God is not yet finished with history. The Red Seas and Jordan River's history are not barriers to God's purpose. In God and with God, the people will overcome.
And this is why I feel like we have to tell our children Bible stories. They will be up against something they have no idea how they're going to get through. And they need to know the story of the Red Sea and of the Jordan River. More so the Jordan River, I think. Because that is the entrance into the promised land, not the entrance into 40 years of wilderness. But that's why. I cannot imagine an existence growing up without an example of divine power over things that stand, that stood and stand in my way. That God has the power to get us through something that we have no idea how we're going to get through. Like a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yeah.
When I had my hearing tested yesterday, because I'm the one that keeps asking what everybody says here, I thought it was interesting. The guy who tested me, when we finished the test, and we were just chatting, he said, I believe that all that's happening to us right now is a warning to us from God.
Okay.
I thought that was interesting that he would even say it, but
Sure.
I think a lot of people feel that way, and sometimes I wonder, all these crazy things keep happening. Virus keep getting worse, and epidemic gets worse. And we're just in such trouble in our country.
We live in a world that's both very big and very small right now.
Yeah.
And I think, that has the potential to draw us so close together as a species. But we got to get through the growing pains of it first. I mean, really. It's there. What are the rules for cell phones? We've not had them long enough to know when it's appropriate, when it's not, to get it out and look at it, It's going to take a while for us to understand this new understanding of information that we're getting, and all of that kind of stuff. And really to see, and I kind of view this as a somewhat of an adolescence again of the human race. Because we've got a whole new lay of the land that we've got to figure out how to work in, which involves technology, global warming, politics, globalism, information, all the internet, all that sort of stuff. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be a lot of trial and error, to figure out what the societal rules are on all that stuff, because it is changing very rapidly. But I would also say that during those times, faith, loving your neighbor, the one that hangs on all the law and the prophets, doing that's what. Tell me the Israelites were not in a similar position. New land, they don't know the rules, they don't, and all this sort of stuff, and they're okay. We'll just have to grow. And if you want to look in the next chapters of Joshua, it wasn't like easy peaches. They still were fighting each other. Building a new nation is not any easier than keeping a 245-year-old nation going. You know what I mean? It's just, it is our perspective that we see right now. But I would suggest that while the circumstances are different, I really have some shared empathy, I think, with the Israelites here, at this time, entering a new place, not knowing how you're going to do it, not having the societal norms. And you see how the Israelites did. They came up with a ton of societal norms, and okay, that's how you do it. It just takes time. It didn't happen overnight, So that's what I think. I mean, I think that this is a time where we are learning how to do all this in this way, We had to do that with the invention of the printing press. We had to do that with the invention of artificial fertilizer for farms. Telephone.
Cars.
Oh, yeah, cars. Oh, gosh. My dad has a pair of radium glowing gloves. They're made out of radium. They will give you cancer. He keeps them in a lead box. But they were sold in the 20s because they didn't have turn signals. So at night, you could do your turn signals.
Oh my gosh.
Can you imagine that that's where we are now with some of these other things? See what I mean?
And the watches didn't have World War II for the pilots.
Oh, sure.
They had
Right.
radio.
Yeah. But see what I mean? We're,
We are evolving. You think we're evolving?
I do. Oh, yeah. I mean,
Growing pains.
exactly. Growing pains, but what that tells me is that we are alive. Dead things don't grow. So if you got growing pains, you're growing. And if you're growing, you're alive. I'm cool with that, I'm happy with that. Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes we get off track though.
But
look at all we have to juggle and balance.
oh, of course, but gosh,
It's overwhelming.
I hear you, but you know what, Kay? I spent some summers on my Uncle Bud's farm, and man, he jungled everything there too. It's just different. I mean, gosh, you would have a cow over here having problems. You'd have a goose that got out in the road. I mean, it was all over the place. Different names of problems. Just the same number, and cared as much about them, So it is just a little different, I mean, it really is.
I used to take my kids to my aunt and uncle's chicken farm over in Darlington County. Same thing.
Yeah.
They had thousands of chickens.
Right.
They had cows. They had goats.
Yeah.
They bred dogs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so.
But even Narendra in Nepal, a subsistence farmer who grows food to eat, because you think COVID's bad here. I mean, they're pretty much isolated in remote villages there, and that's it. Even just to eat, he has to run around and do things from sun up to sundown. And does he get anxious about it? Yeah. Sometimes he does. You know what I mean? But he picks himself up And he goes and he tends to the crop, or he goes and whatever to his kid or whatever. And that's kind of what we have to do. Pick ourselves up, go tend to what we can tend to, and do that. I think. And of course I could say, well, if everybody did that, it wouldn't be that bad, but nobody's ever done it before, so why are we one now? All right, so I want you to recall the story about God's making a way across the Jordan. And then I want you to think about the ways that God makes that possible in your life. So close your eyes. Oh God, I thank you for making a way for me to be a priest when I didn't think it was possible. Are there others? Let us pray. Grant us the hope, O God, that you will make a way forward for us. And grant us the trust, O God, to take the first step. Amen.
Amen. Good.
Well, thanks. Y'all always compliment Ryan. I'm glad that I not chopped liver.